Clio, global leader in cloud-based legal technology. Whether working from the office or a remote location, legal professionals need the ability to manage every aspect of their law firms from a secure, centralized cloud-based platform. Clio's suite of legal technology solutions helps law firms manage every stage of the client lifecycle and save time, strengthen client relationships, and increase revenue. Clio Manage, Clio's legal practice management software, ensures law firms can access cases, manage documents, track time, and invoice and collect payments. Clio Grow, Clio's client intake and legal CRM software, helps law firms grow their business through better engagement with potential and existing clients. Clio also features over 200 integrations with the most popular apps for legal professionals, including Office 365, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google My Business, Fastcase, Dropbox, and QuickBooks Online. Easy to implement and use, Clio provides industry-leading security, 24/5 customer support, and data migration solutions. Clio is a proud member benefit provider of the Minnesota State Bar Association. Members of the MSBA receive a 10% discount on Clio products. Visit clio.com/minbar to claim your discount today. Thank you, Clio, for your support. That is a longer ad read than usual, but super happy to have Clio, very valuable member benefit. I want to welcome our guests, Jared and Jess, today to our program. Very excited to talk about, we titled this one Spring Cleaning, to talk about some efficiency tips to update the practice during this time of year, with maybe a special focus on what it means to take our learnings from the pandemic into our back to normal from the new normal. I guess I'm getting confused about what normal is these days, but
no such thing.
Yeah,
abnormal.
Abnormal. Why don't we begin just quickly with some introductions? Jared and Jess, I think everyone knows you, but maybe you can do an intro for us as well. Jared, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Everybody knows Jess. I'm not as cool though. My name's Jared Correia. I'm a former practicing lawyer. I've been doing business management consulting for attorneys for about the last 15 years or so. Worked with like 4,000 law firms across the globe, and I do that out of a company called Red Cave Law Firm Consulting. So essentially, I help lawyers to manage more effective and efficient businesses. We focus on technology, efficiency, marketing, financial management. And oh, look at that. There's my website, which is coming up in there. That is highly unfortunate. just look.
This is why I never Google Live.
Just look at the URL. My website normally works. No, I'll have to look into that. Great. Okay. So
hashtag real life.
Just email me instead. Jared at Red Cave Legal.
I looked at it this morning. It was live.
I know. Oh, of course, timing, right? I've also got a software company. Please don't Google this, Mike.
Yeah.
It's called Gideon, and it's a website chat tool for lawyers. Clio integration, by the way, the great Clio law practice management software. So that's me in a nutshell. And if you can't find my website, if it's still not operational later today, which hopefully it will be, feel free to just look me up on LinkedIn. LinkedIn always works. Jess, does your website work?
I think it works. Although that stuff happens, right? And it's always like some inopportune moment, because when are you ever
always an
looking at your
inopportune
own
moment?
website?
Yeah.
So it's like some new client lead is like, I tried to contact you, but your website is down, and you're like, I'm Jess Birken. Hello. I'm a lawyer here in Minnesota in the Twin Cities. I work with nonprofits, and my website's birkenlaw.com, and hopefully it's working today. You can find me there.
Well, thank you both for joining us. The reason I wanted both of you to introduce yourselves is both of you have got great backgrounds on this topic specifically. So we've sort of framed this as a top 10 efficiency tips. We can very, very informal. We haven't set up any screen share. In fact, I think everyone has agreed to go talking head. So I'm going to take off our screen share. Kind of with the Jared, your email had an interesting topic. We've seen a lot of folks talking about, as they return to the office, a lot of folks maybe not returning to the office ever, about, our commercial landlords might be feeling a little heat.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I've talked to a lot of law firms about this. And excuse me, I just had to email my web developer. Anyway, segue. Yeah, all these law firms have traditionally bought more space than they needed. And I think this is true even pre-pandemic. Like, can't tell you how many law firms I've gone into where it's like, man, that's wasted space and that's wasted space. And it's like, oh, you have a fireplace. How convenient. How does that contribute to the bottom line? I've gone to places where like there's rotisserie chicken available and people are like feeding me chicken off of a stick when I sit in the lobby, right? All good stuff. But like, does that really mean I'm going to become a client of a law firm? Probably not. So I just think lawyers need to be more circumspect about this thing and always should have been anyway. And there are metrics out there that you can look at. Like most law firms don't look at stuff like this, but in terms of like revenue per square foot in your law firm, like how much money do you actually make for every square footage of office space that you have? And
How do you
if you've
even
got,
do that math? Like, I'm a lawyer, not a mathematician.
oh, it's pretty easy. It's simple division. And there are some reports in place too where you can do this. Like through some of the case management softwares, you can actually run a report, which is super convenient. So as long as you get your timekeepers, as long as you get total square footage, you can do that kind of math. And the deal is like, if the pandemic has shown us anything, it's that the bar for professionalism for lawyers is probably different than what lawyers have always thought it was. I mean, that's been a large takeaway from me. I talked to so many lawyers, and they're all trying to do what they think a lawyer should do, but they're not trying to be themselves. Now, Jess does not have this problem, which is great. I think you're a great avatar for the modern lawyer. And I'm not just saying that because we're on a podcast together, but like the more genuine you can be, the more authentic you can be, the less you have to rely on things like the big office space to impress the client who's probably never going to be in your office 90% of the time. Like just cut that cost and do something else with it. Use technology to get more efficient, do more marketing. Law firms don't spend enough on marketing. Take that money and do something else with it. And if you're a solo or a small firm, you don't even need a traditional office lease. Like you can just do an office share and likely be fine. So if somebody
Oh,
wants
yeah.
to meet you, they can. Yeah, I know you have thoughts on
And
this,
we have,
Jess. So,
we have great co-working spaces in the,
right.
even I went to St. Cloud a couple of weeks back to get chicken nugget fixed. And
Hey,
I
there's
was
no
like,
shame in that.
I need a place.
For those
in
who were
the-
not in the previous conversation,
Yeah, this
chicken
was one
nugget,
of
I
our
believe, is the
bunnies.
rabbit. Yeah.
Our baby bunny, small and brown. She's named Chicken Nugget. She had to get spayed. So I was in St. Cloud, which is, outside of the metro area, and there were like 6 co-working spaces
Yeah.
available. And there are lots of people I know who do an informal office share, with like an accounting firm that has extra space or something like that. So yeah, you can absolutely cut down on the office costs.
Like the level to which people care about that stuff has gone down precipitously. Like even if you cared about somebody's office space like 16 months ago, as a consumer, I'm talking about, you've been forced to care less about it in the preceding 16 months. So that mindset is totally changing. And we got Angela in the chat who's saying it's not how much money you make, it's how much you keep. That's pretty good. I think that's a good deal.
Yeah,
Looking at your
that's totally
margins,
it.
most attorneys don't do that at a very basic level.
Right? But for real, like I think there is this cultural thing where we think we have to be really serious and we have to be
Yes.
there's like what does professional mean? And professional means like I don't show my personality and your clients are just humans and they want to there's some adage about people hire someone they know, like, and trust. And being a human is a huge part of that, right? So if you show your personality, you wear your Twins shirt or your Mets, what is your, I don't do baseball. What is that logo on your
Minnesota
hat?
Twins. I was trying to pander unsuccessfully.
Is it a Twins logo? You can tell I don't do
This
baseball.
is
That's
the
my
old
state.
school Twins logo. I can give you a pass on this one. They don't actually use this logo anymore. They reverted back to like the TC
Yeah.
logo.
See, I'm from Wisconsin, so you need the old school, the mitt logo. Then I'd be
I
like,
have one of those
Brewers.
as well. I can change
There you
halfway
go.
through. I've collected a
Okay.
lot of baseball hats during the
Acceptable.
pandemic. Without business expenses, I've just been going hog wild on buying baseball hats. But
Right.
go ahead.
But if you were a lawyer and you were wearing that hat, a client would be like, oh, that's so cool. You like the Twins. Oh, blah, blah, blah. That is
Yes.
much more connection than like marble columns and Baroque furniture or whatever we think impresses people, right? So it
Now,
depends on your
I'm
target market, but
I think I'm older than all of you, based on the age of the children we were just talking about. But I had a client in my office. I was doing there are all manner of things that I was doing wrong at the time as a baby lawyer. But that client sat in my office and said, I was at one of your competitors, and I sat in the office and they had this amazing downtown view. They told me how impressed they were with the office space, and that has always stuck with me, and feel a little bit of gratification knowing that maybe the office space doesn't matter as much. My dinky little office back in the day, but I do feel like there is some professional presence. Is that now a digital footprint? How is the how is a professional presence now expressed? Do we all need to be doing podcasts, or what is the
Totally. Well, so I kind of see that as, so I'm somebody who consults with lawyers. I also hire lawyers from time to time for corporate work. And when I see like a big building or an expensive address, literally the only thing I'm thinking is they're going to charge me more. And I think a lot of people feel that way. So I think this notion of professionalism, when it makes people think that you're stuffy or expensive, is not good, because to the modern legal consumer, they want to pay less. They want to drive down that cost, and anything that looks like it's going to increase that cost is bad news. So I think a lot of this digital presence is shifting to the web. So a lot of attorneys don't even have like a Google My Business profile, which is a free thing to set up. But when they search your office, there's going to be this little box on the side of the search results that say, hey, this law firm is legitimate. And Google has a program now called Google Screen. So they're like screening attorneys, and you get that little Google check mark. That is far more effective, I think, than having a downtown address. Those are just two examples, but doing things like that are where I would be sinking my time and effort, rather than saying, let me be professional in a standard that worked in the 80s or the 90s.
yeah, and if you don't know how to claim your Google My Business listing, Jess Birken just wants to help on demand from Minnesota CLE.
Yeah.
That's literally in the catalog right
I didn't
now.
even know that. What a segue.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. I gave up my office during the pandemic, and I do want to spend time with Megan, my wing woman, but I don't think I need an office to do that necessarily. We went back to our co-working space, and so when we want to, meet in person when the time comes, we'll be able to do that there, but I don't need to pay a monthly amount to maintain an office. Really, when I was paying rent for nothing for months and months and months, and finally I was just like, well, why do I have the office? Well, because some people didn't know how to do a virtual meeting. And that's really the crux of it. Well, guess what? All of my clients, anyway, know how to do a Zoom call. Now, there are probably some folks that work with the elderly where that wouldn't apply, but make house calls. Talk about 5-star counsel, right? There are so many more ways to like crack the nut on being professional than just having a big office space. So I love that as an efficiency tip for sure.
Yeah. And, it's funny you bring that up too, because I don't know if you guys watched The Office when it was on TV, but I loved The Office. And there's this one scene where like Andy keeps texting Daryl, and he's like, look, is this important enough to text me? He's like, I saw a squirrel in the parking lot. I think what the pandemic has done is made it so that if you're going to meet with somebody in person or schedule something, there has to be like a legitimate reason for it. What I love is that there's no more of this office stuff where people are like, oh, swing by, or let's just grab lunch. What the heck, You need to have a legitimate reason to meet with somebody in person. And I hope that sticks around, actually. Like that makes it more effective from a time management perspective from both sides. And to this point you just made, like, if I'm a legal consumer, like, and I live like an hour outside the city, why would I drive into a metropolitan area, park, take 4 hours out of my day when I could just literally turn on a web conference, take an hour out of my day and be done and have 3 hours of my time back? That's way more valuable to me than any perception that's being applied by a law firm.
Yeah. I think any parents in attendance are already thinking, please don't go back to PTA conferences in person, right?
Right.
Sitting on the tiny chair in the hallway waiting your turn while everything's running late. So much better to just turn on the Zoom call. I mean, our clients are thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to pay to park or deal with traffic or do all the things just to come fill out your intake form, which was one of my efficiency tips. We should get rid of that.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. And I want to remind folks too that they can use the Q&A and the chat at any time to plug in their questions for our panelists. Absolutely feel free to do that.
Yeah, please do. It's more fun if you do.
Yes, talk with us. As you can see, any subject is open. Are you doing like exclusively electronic intake forms now, Jess?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and I've gone like off the deep end with efficiency. Like now when somebody books with me, I use online scheduling and then it says, "Hey, here's a link to like please complete your consultation, onboarding form." And then when they hire me, I email them another link that's like, "Hey, welcome, you're a new client. Like, let's go over how this works and get some information from you." And then that all can get harvested and put into my contacts, put into my case management software. Like Clio, our sponsor for today. I mean, if you are not using something that's cloud connected like Clio to manage your intake and you're still typing into the PDF or having, God forbid, actual paper, you're just missing out on all of the efficiencies that come from like, oh, okay, tell me the 3 contact people at the nonprofit that I should know their contact information. And
Yeah.
then I'm able to say name, phone number, email, put that in my Outlook, right? I have simple no code automation tools that harvest all of that information. And I don't have to pay Megan $20 an hour or whatever to like sit there and type Jane Smith at gmail.com. Just let the robots do it.
Oh yeah, like cloud technology, no code automation, which you talked about, which is essentially like easy to design automation
Yeah.
tools, which is
I'm dumb.
basically
I
like,
don't know how to program stuff. I
yeah,
need
but
it
you
to be
don't need
drag
to.
and
You
drop.
just type it in. Yeah, or drag and drop, even
Yeah.
better. But yeah, this is a key component in terms of like client conversion too. Like people prefer this actually. And I talk to a lot of lawyers who are like, okay, it's going to be high touch. Like people love to talk to me because lawyers have this thing where like every client, every document, everything they do is like a special little snowflake and it could never be replicated by anything.
Right.
I have to do it. I have to personally do it or it's not going to be done well. But people don't want that hassle, right? Maybe you want to talk to them, but maybe they don't want to talk to you necessarily, right? Or talk to you as long as you want to stay on the phone with them. So in terms of the intake stuff, as a lawyer in a busy city with competitors, you got to stop the shop. So when you get somebody who comes into your website or comes into an online platform of yours, if they can schedule an appointment, if they can take a next step, that's extremely valuable for them. And if that makes it so that they don't call the next 10 law firms on the list, that doesn't guarantee that you're going to get a conversion, but it's certainly going to help in terms of giving you a chance to do that because you get the first bite of the apple.
Oh, totally. I mean, this is, and it's all tied back to that professionalism thing we were talking about too, right? So like, this is a great example. My kids need braces. I have paid of money to the orthodontist. Okay, we're talking like $6,000 a kid. Okay, it's not
Yeah.
cheap to put
Yeah.
braces on your children. This place emails me and says, "Oh, it's time for Samantha to schedule an appointment. Please call our office."
You're like,
What?
no, thank you.
I have to call your office and talk to someone to skip. Why can't I just do it online? And
Eh.
and is the phone number in the email isn't even clickable. It is so annoying. It is the most annoying thing
Oh
in the
yeah,
whole world.
if you
And
don't have click to call, like you got to get
I'm
there
so
for sure.
angry that I gave this person $12,000 for 2 children's worth of teeth fixing, and I can't even click the damn phone number in the email. Like, you don't want your clients feeling that way about you. It's just
Yeah, you're like, hey,
make it
invest some of that
easy.
12 grand in Calendly. Oh wait, it's free.
I know that's the biggest pain is like, I know how easy this stuff is. And I'm like,
Right.
you need to do better for this much money. You know, it's
Well, right. As somebody who's a business owner who understands that, like, it's so frustrating when it doesn't happen because it's relatively simple and straightforward to do. It just
Yeah.
takes the smallest amount of effort. And I don't know. I think for a lot of attorneys, a lot of it is inertia because it's just
Yes.
like a lot of
You
attorneys are
just
just like,
haven't done it.
yeah, hey, the money's coming in. We're good. Like, let's just keep doing this stuff that we're doing.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to shake them out of that. I thought like a catastrophic shared experience, like a global pandemic, might have done it. And it's done it for some law firms, but not as many as you would think. Apparently, they're waiting for the asteroid strike before they update their online marketing tactics.
Well, and you know, even if you don't care about the client's convenience, which I think we should, I mean, there are enough reasons for my clients to get mad at me, right? I'm only human. Sometimes I miss a deadline or I promise something and then actually it's going to be a little bit different because maybe you didn't tell me all the facts and now I have to tell you, well, now that I found this out,
Right.
actually
Right.
we have lots of opportunities to create feelings of disappointment in our clients that sometimes are our fault and sometimes are just not. And it can include sending them a big bill for all the time that we spent on their file, right? I mean, there's just
Yeah.
lots of opportunities. So my thought is I want to minimize the times my client is frustrated or upset with me or with the situation that they're in that I'm working on.
Right.
And so just purely from a self-interested perspective, like I don't I have enough times to screw up.
No, it's a great way to look at it. It's totally true. Like
Well,
attorneys are perfectionists, but there's never going to be a representation that's like entirely perfect.
Right.
when I discovered Calendly, I have to say though, that was such a huge lifesaver for me. That was, you know, not only for the people that I'm working with. I mean, it's a service to them for sure because it's easy just to click on the link. But for me, oh my God, that was, you know, that was life changing. I mean, literally a life changing event. I'm curious to know how many of our listeners are using either Calendly and Jess. What I think you're using, you're not a Calendly fan. I think there are two
I'm not a
camps.
Calendly fan. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love
Do you use
Acuity
Acuity?
scheduling. Acuity scheduling is the
Yeah.
one I use, and I'll be actually talking about online scheduling at the next Jess Birken just wants to help. So come to that. And like I
I'm
just
waiting for
talked
the
about this for
TLC to the
AOI.
TLC show to come out. When's that going to happen?
Me and my rabbits on TLC. Yeah, it's a great tool, and it's so selfish, right? Like, yes, it's great for the clients because who doesn't do you go to your hair salon or your dentist or your doctor and you schedule online and you think it's so easy and convenient, right? We want our clients to have that same convenience. But oh my God, like you protect your time that way. So if you don't want to talk to people before 8:30 in the morning or 9:30 in the morning, or you don't want to take client calls after 6 p.m. or 5 p.m., you can control when the calls come. And then like the number one biggest, ethics problem is people are mad that we didn't call them back. And so this eliminates that. When I worked at the criminal defense firm before law school, oh Lord, you got a high maintenance group, people who are facing jail time, right? They're calling all the time just to check in and whatever because they're freaked out. Man, online scheduling, you could let them schedule a call in the hours that you've predetermined are okay for you, and they're totally calm because they know they're going to get their lawyer on the phone. It's a time that's convenient for you and for them. Ethics almost eliminated. Just don't screw it up.
And the cost is, as Jared was saying, is $0. So
Yeah,
it's
if you're
Yeah, a
like
lot
a
of these things are
solo
free.
and yeah, exactly. Well, I just threw another one into the chat too. So Calendly and Acuity are probably the top two online calendaring tools I see lawyers using. But then there's actually a cool one called X.AI, which essentially creates like an email assistant for you. So if you want to do the back and forth, let's schedule an appointment thing, XAI will do that for you, but you don't have to have a staff person do it. It's an AI working in the background that reads your calendar and serves different appointment times to people. Now, I don't know how much I love that because there's some crazy stats out there about scheduling with lawyers. Like it takes an average of 8 emails to schedule an
Yeah.
appointment with a lawyer.
As a consumer, I don't want to
Yeah.
spend 8 emails scheduling. I just want to click, click, done.
Right.
And that's
Have
why
you-
I don't like Calendly, because it's not like always in that calendar format. It's like the next 8 available times, and
Yes.
I don't know. That doesn't compute for my brain.
Yeah, I'd rather see the full calendar as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Office 365 has a scheduler as well. Have any of you tried that?
It's garbage, but it's there.
I kind of hate Microsoft Teams. I'm not. Yeah, I was on the phone with a guy who like runs Microsoft Teams, and he's like, "How do you like it?" I'm like, "I hate it. I can't do it." Like everything in Microsoft Teams. Hopefully, Microsoft is not a sponsor of this program. Has a better free.
Well,
version,
not
right?
anymore. Thanks
Not
a lot.
anymore.
dude.
They were. Like Slack is better than the chat thing in Teams. Zoom is better than Microsoft Teams video conferencing. So, and this is largely personal preference. Like the same way that Jess prefers Acuity over Calendly, I just prefer alternative tools over Microsoft. I think what Microsoft does well is email calendar, document generation using like Word. They're good with spreadsheets. They're good with PowerPoint. But beyond that, like I think there's a ton of other tools out there
Yeah,
that you can
the
utilize.
Office suite like has not been improved by all of the like
Right.
million additions. But I will say, if you're on a super tight budget, you're just starting a firm, and you
Yes.
have to get 365 anyway, there are a ton of free things that are included in your subscription that if you're just like, I really can't afford $15 a month for acuity scheduling, which I mean, I think that's a little bit BS, but because how you gonna run your business? Okay, it costs money.
Yeah, right.
But
That's the problem.
that it is free. You're already paying for it, so you can try it out there. And then if you don't like it, you can always try the alternatives. Many of which have free level accounts, like Zoom. You can have a free level account. It's just not as full featured, right? So
Yeah, exactly. Like if you bought Microsoft 365 for like $8 to $12 a month, you get everything. And maybe it's not perfect, but you don't have to pay for anything else. And that's
Yeah.
it's a pretty decent technology budget for a startup law firm.
right, that's kind of a good segue into one of your efficiency tips, Jared, which was like, reducing your many software subscriptions.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
We talked
that's a
about-
good. I wanted to ask about that. The one of the presenters, I forget who now, at the ABA Tech Show, made the argument that she doesn't like fully integrated. That's not what she wants. She wants the best available tool for each service. So she's using Dipsado for one thing. She's using one calendaring tool. So she's got, and that's always kind of fun to watch those presentations to see all, what their tech stack looks like, this, sort of a shop tour. I love those programs, but what do you think about this idea of just using all the best tools that are available rather than finding an integrated solution? Jared, you were the one, maybe that one's for you because you were the one saying, let's reduce the number of.
I was going to give Jess the opportunity to start, but she's like,
well, I know when I do talks and I list, because I'm like that, right? I have a Frankenstein firm. It's like the body is composed of like body parts from everywhere. And when I tend to give sort of like a global, like 30,000 foot view talk, a lot of lawyers in the room, they're like, eyes are like, oh my God, because they immediately think I got to do all this right away or I'm a failure. And I'm always like, you just start with one thing. I wasn't birthed from some law firm mother in the sky with all of this built, right? Like I started with one thing and then you just build on that. And I am with that person from Tech Show. Like I don't use Microsoft Teams because I don't like it. I want the better tool and I'm okay with cobbling it all together. But Jared, you had a thought about reducing software subscriptions. So what do you reduce? Like, how do you know what to cut?
Right. So this is
a thing, right? Like I've got like 50 subscriptions and I have all their renewal dates calendared so I can remember, like, if you don't use this anymore, like cut it.
So many subscriptions, so many passwords. Well, the big thing that's happening right now in legal, which you both probably know this because you're following it, there's like a ton of acquisitions going on right now. So number of the case management software companies just got acquired by venture capital firms. More is going to be occurring in that space. And the reason for that is everybody's got this notion that they're going to come into legal. And some of these venture capital firms come from outside the vertical. And they're like, we're going to deliver the one solution that every law firm needs. Like there's a holy grail. And Jess is shaking her head. I agree. Like people have been talking about this for about a decade. And I'm like, okay, it's been supposedly going to happen every year since 2011. When's it going to happen? It's not going to happen.
It's not gonna
Lawyers are
happen.
smart. They want the best in class tools across the board. So I am on that wavelength as well. I want the best tools. But how do you decide to do this in a way that's not going to get you 50,000 subscriptions, right? So I say there's like 3 product. My daughter just delivered me my phone. Thank you. There are like major tools you need to run a law firm and any business: productivity software, a relational database, a case management software like Clio, accounting software, and a CRM, customer relationship management software. So what I do is I start there. Like, and again, if you're starting out and you don't do the CRM right away, that's okay too. Do it in a year or something like that. So get those 4 products in place and then actually dive into them. Don't do the thing that lawyers do, which is like, oh, I'm going to start
Shiny,
using this
shiny.
product. And then,
Yeah.
and oh, I have my productivity software. I know how to email. That's all I need to do, right? Well, that program does other stuff. So dive into the tools, figure out that you hate Microsoft Teams. If you hate Microsoft Teams, that's cool. Then go to another platform and get the best in class internal communication software. Get the best in class video conferencing tool. Get the best in class payment tool. Like if you look at what the case management software is doing in particular, like they're building out their own white labeled e-signature tools, payments tools. But if you don't like those, it's okay to move off. But I would start there. Like go with the big 4, see what you can get out of that, and then fill in on top of that. And I'm also not like a big shiny device person. Like I'm very circumspect about buying new technology, and I want
Oh
to kind of
yeah,
wait
not
to
an
see how it
early
works,
adopter.
do a demo. Right, right.
Yeah,
I'm an
I'm
early
like
adopter in the
you,
sense that I'll
Mike. You
demo
go
everything.
figure it out first.
Yeah. Well, I'll demo anything. Like if anybody
Sure.
calls me and they're like, "Hey, I got this cool new software," I'm like, "All right, I'll see how cool it actually is." Like I'll demo it, but I'm not
Mhm.
buying anything until that proves itself out a little bit more. So I think if you start with those 4, like there's not that much more you probably need. And if you're comfortable with having like say 4 softwares that do everything you need to do, that's cool too. Like I have respect for that as well. Like not everybody thinks about this in the same way.
Yeah. Well, and it's like you if you start with one base that can connect to other things. For me,
Yeah,
that's
so
the greatest
Zapier
efficiency.
you had in the chat, which I didn't
Yeah,
mention, but I think is an extremely popular tool, and not everybody knows what Zapier does. So
right.
Zapier. So you know the correct pronunciation?
I
Can I
know,
talk
because
about
their
this briefly?
tagline is Zapier makes you happier,
Right.
which I feel like they had to come up with because they made a grammar
Everyone
boo-boo in
mispronounced
making
it.
their name without 2 P's in it. I'm like, you guys,
The correct phonetic pronunciation is
yeah,
Zapier. I'll go to
we
my
had,
grave saying
yeah,
that.
right. It's Zapier makes you happier. No. Oh dear. But anyway, like so just going back to the case management stuff, there is no one size fits all because there are so many different kinds of practices. I'm not in a trial-based practice. If I was, I would be super concerned about timelines and filing deadlines and making sure there were workflows that like calendared things out on a whatever. That's not super important to me. So there is no one size fits every law. Like law. We are better law. No. No. So these VCs that are coming into the space, I'm just like, you guys, this doesn't make
Well, I
any
think a
sense.
lot of it is like they've had success in other industries, and
Yeah,
they're
they
like,
think
oh, we can just
medical,
replicate this. Yeah, it's the same.
doctors. We did this for doctors. We can do this for lawyers. And it's like, nah,
Yeah,
not so much.
it's
Also,
a
way
it's a
more
unique market.
resistance.
Yes,
Way more
absolutely,
resistance. So
absolutely.
anyway, our Clio, right, is a really great jumping off point because it is cloud connected, it is easy to use, it is intuitive, and you can connect all of your other things to it. And it's not trying to be one size fits everybody. It's like we connect to everything you need. And that to me is like way more important that you have like a good hub and spoke.
Yeah.
Um, so if people are looking to be more efficient and you're not using something like Clio where it connects to the cloud, and you've got the server in the closet. Like I used to be an Abacus
Yep.
practice management software user when I
Mhm.
ran a firm with someone else, and they already had Abacus in the server in the closet. And I was like, okay, but can we
Server in the
put
closet. Yes.
something cloud based? And then we migrated to Clio. And at some point they were like, well, why do we have the server? And I was like, good question. We don't really need it anymore, do we?
Um,
So, you know,
no, that's a great point. So, like, the thing about Clio that I think is good, and this was a choice they made early on, which I think is smart, is they really focused in on integration partnerships in much the same way that Salesforce did that in the CRM space. And they have more integrations than anybody. So Zapier is great, but one of the issues with Zapier is that if you're going to use it, you got to pay another subscription to get access to it, right? So like
yeah.
now, if you can get a direct integration through a company's API, so you don't have to pay that additional fee, that's helpful too. And Clio has so many integrations that you don't need Zapier for that it's a pretty good buy as far as that's concerned. But the server in the closet thing is funny. I remember I had a client that I was working with, and I went to his office, and he like opened this closet, and he had something that looked like the Danger Will Robinson robot.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, "What is this?" It was taller than me, and he's like, "Oh, that's my case management system." He had built a computer back in like the early 70s that would
Oh
run his.
Lord.
This was like the 2000s that would run his practice. And he's like, "This thing is amazing. I'm never going to get rid of it. I tinker with it every day." And I'm like, "Dude, this thing is older than me." And it's like, there are lawyers who have that mindset,
Yeah.
and that
Well,
it
and
is
you're one
very hard.
fire, you're
Right. Well, right.
catastrophic incident away from your whole firm going down. Because is
Spill
it
your
that
orange
stuff?
juice on the server. Right.
Right. Or the place burns down,
Or
or
it
like the
burns. Yeah.
the
How hot
sprinklers
was
go
it in
off
that
in the
room?
building.
What was the temperature?
That was a hot room.
Yeah.
That was a hot room.
Yeah.
Have
Sweating
either of
You
you
profusely.
know?
either of you caught any of the? I meant to bring this up earlier. The Bucerius legal tech essentials this month. There's this month
I have
long
not.
free
Yeah.
event. So I mean, it's Richard Susskind
Yeah.
and Margaret Hagan and the whole lineup of Dan Katz is giving regular presentation. And Jess gave me a great deal of comfort in saying, you know what, don't worry about stacking Zapiers because you'll get a notification if anything breaks. It's not,
Yeah.
sort of getting the opposite, and I may be misinterpreting it. That's what I want to know if any of you caught this, but they say, we have to be careful because these setups are brittle. If you're, these integrations, in addition to, managing, a dozen subscriptions, you're also managing just the potentially brittle technical nature of the integration.
And that's true with anything. That's true if you have a server in the closet, you run an update, and all of a sudden your hardware isn't working. You have some weird glitch in your laptop, and your internet goes down. Whatever. Like that's just the world we live in. Like going back to typewriters isn't going to solve for
Oh yeah,
that.
and I would say
You
that
know?
there are largely more problems with physical devices because you have nobody to turn to except like your IT person who's like a call
Yeah.
away, and you may be down for a day, or yourself. With a lot of these cloud providers, like they've just got teams of people working on this constantly. So Microsoft's some part of Microsoft Azure was down for like 45 minutes a couple weeks back, and like people's hair is on fire. And the way I look at that is like, okay, is yours down for 45 minutes? That's bad in a modern world. But think about that from the context of like 10, 20 years ago when your services might be down for days or weeks. It's a totally different ball game.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
cloud actually keeps you with a higher uptime, less cost than traditional infrastructure would.
Well, and if your office burns down or your laptop is broken or something, all I have to do is go grab another Dell off the shelf and log into all of my
Right.
tools. And I'm
Yes,
back
to
in
take one of
action.
the 20 computers you have at your house and
Yeah,
just
pretty
log
much.
into it.
Yeah. There's a question in the chat. Do you use Clio Grow, Jess, for the intake process you described? I do not, because I've sort of like my Frankenstein machine like has grown to a point where Clio didn't even make sense for me anymore, but I am still a huge advocate. I do something totally different, but Clio Grow I used to use the tool that Clio acquired to build Grow, and it's a great,
Lexicata.
yeah, Lexicata is now Clio Grow. It's a, if you're like, this is all new to me, but I'm a Clio user, just I would totally try it. I mean, just check it out, because if you already use Clio, you're just extending your subscription to include more Clio, and you're not having to design a whole tech stack process that like I have. So, and I think that goes back to Jared's thing about call your software subscriptions, right? Like try the thing that's the add-on or the thing that's available in what you have before you decide I need a new shiny tool and invent a whole new process, when you've got something that possibly does it.
I tell people like take a and no one does this, right? But I do because maybe I'm a freak. I tell people like check your software subscriptions on an annual basis and be like, what are you paying for? See if there's
Totally.
redundancy there. And then I also
Totally.
check the settings on my tools. Like Zoom, for example, I use Zoom constantly. So I check the settings probably more than on an annual basis just to see if there's anything I need to know, if there's been any updates I could tweak. And that's really helpful. But this is so James has a question in the chat, which I think is a really good one. Do you favor a PC based computer or is Apple okay for these software tools? Like, here's the best part of like, if you're a totally cloud based law firm, those systems are device agnostic. So that means that like whatever device you're on, Apple, PC, tablet, smartphone, it doesn't functionally matter at all. There used to be Jess, do you remember like PC Apple debate from back in the day?
Oh
We're
god,
like,
yeah. I'm
well,
like the commercials, I'm like, I am the PC. I'm that guy. I'm not the cool Mac at all.
right. And oh man, like John's using a Mac in the law firm. We got to install parallels. There's a huge problem here. That world doesn't exist anymore if you're on the cloud. So the greatest thing about this is that debate is dead. Like you can use Apple or PC, whichever you prefer.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of PC just because I live in Microsoft Word and I want the office tools to be like fully functional. And sometimes little things that I want to use aren't as functional in a Mac, but it's totally Jared's dead on.
I'm like a PC person, but like I don't begrudge people who use Macs. Like I've just always used PCs
Yeah,
because I'm
it's just
old.
not it's not my thing. Exactly. Yeah, I grew up with the first computers and that's just where I stuck.
I've tried to
Um
use a Mac. I'm terrible at it. So for me, it's mostly like I just like the warm comfort of my PC screen, and I'm very happy with that.
There you go. Here's two little tips for managing your subscriptions. What I do is anytime I sign up for, well, first time I realized I should do this, I just went through everything and calendared the renewal dates. And so now when I sign up for a new
Yeah,
subscription,
it's
I
a
put
great
a
idea.
recurring annual all day meeting on my calendar about 30 days before the renewal is supposed to happen. And the calendar thing says, are you still using whatever it is, right? And that's a reminder to me that like if I'm not really using this anymore, I need to just cancel before they hit me up for another year or whatever it is. And then also, my bookkeeper, and if you're doing your own books, that's another efficiency thing that you should not be doing that. Use a service.
Yes, farm
Jared
it out.
has comments about that. But
I have
my
comments about
bookkeeper,
farming things out in general. Yes, go
oh,
ahead.
right, totally delegate. My bookkeeper will give me this thing called a transaction by vendor list. So I can like look through all of my transactions by vendor and make sure that she gives it to me so they're coded properly to the right category. But it's also a great opportunity for me to go, oh crap, I'm still paying for whatever software that I don't use anymore. And I can see how much it is because it's an accounting report, right? So it's a great way to sort of do an annual or a quarterly take stock in what am I paying for.
Yeah, I just did a podcast on this with an accountant who works in the same fashion. It's like a key thing to do. But then this whole notion that you bring up of farming out, like accounting is one place you can do that. But like I talk to attorneys all the time about practicing at the top of their law license, which means like as an attorney, largely what you want to be doing is billing for the highest amount of work that you can charge, for the work that you can charge the highest amount for, or marketing for that work.
Right.
if anything else you're doing is
And
you're going to
if
make
you're a time
less.
biller, don't do stuff that you can't bill for.
Right.
Right. So all the
Yeah.
things we're talking about, putting your intake online, online scheduling, automating processes and getting content, like your time is worth 300, 400, 250, whatever it is per hour. Is it best spent going, well, I have time at 2 p.m. on Tuesday and 6 p.m. on Thursday, and spending that 8 emails? No, it's not. You can make more money if you get rid of some of this stuff, especially
Yeah.
stuff you can't bill for.
And I don't think people think of delegating as like delegating to machines or software necessarily yet, but that's all we're talking about. Like
Totally.
10, 15 years ago, you would have allocated these tasks to an admin person. Now there are machines that can do it for a significant cost reduction. And even like accounting is one, but like website, like I know a bunch of attorneys who design their own websites. Like, why?
Yeah.
If you can bill out at $450 an hour and you can have someone design you a website for $75 an hour, that's a win for you. So I think
Oh,
attorneys
totally.
often look too much at like, how do I reduce my operating costs to bare bones? But really, the question is margin that you can make. So how much can you bill, and how does that compare to how much you pay out? So if you're billing out $450 an hour, let's say, as often as you can, and you're farming out work on occasion at a rate of between $30 to $75 an hour, you're gonna make more money than if you didn't do that.
Yeah.
So the math works.
I think part of the problem there is that it's part of that is on us as a bar association, is like, who's a good web developer, right? The market for some of these, one of the most popular conversations in the solo small community, our online forum, is always about, I need a referral for a web developer, for I need a paralegal. What do you guys think of of these services? Places like Upwork or Law Clerk, Fast Case has got a service called, can't remember, but there are a lot
That's
of
catchy.
Can't remember. I'm gonna have to talk to Ed Walters
How
about
could
it.
I forget that?
I'm in trouble now. That's something I should know.
That's
I
right.
just
Ed
blanked on
never
the,
needs to learn about this. I won't
Pretty
tell him.
much anything from Fast Case is going to be good. But I think the big problem that I see, so there's two problems. One is the stuff that's for lawyers.
Oh
It's
boy.
very
Yes,
much
let's
like
talk
the
about
wedding
this.
industry. Okay. The wedding industry, they just rip you off because you're getting married and you're emotional and it's your big day and they're ripping you off. We are the same. They're like, you guys are dumb. You don't know anything. You think this is a reasonable price because you don't know how it works. And they just rip us off constantly. And so that also paired with Upwork is great if you know what you're doing, if you know what you're asking for. And most lawyers don't know what they're asking for. And that's why the other people can rip us off, because we don't know what a wireframe is. We don't know what good branding is. We don't know what our marketing message should be. We haven't thought about what makes us unique. So we just end up with a bunch of websites with gavels and eagles saying we're tough, fair advocates for you. And we just, it's like, I don't know what the solution is there, Jared, but
The selling to it's so
Work
funny
with
you bring this
Jared.
up. Well, the selling for lawyers thing is so funny. Like I remember like maybe 10 years ago, Dragon, the dictation software,
Yeah.
they came out with Dragon for lawyers. I remember this one. It was like 5 times the cost of regular Dragon because they know lawyers love to dictate stuff. And literally all they did was add 500 Latin words to vocabulary. That was all they did. It was like a total price gouge. And that happens to lawyers all the time. So yeah, there's like a lot of vendors out there that do like the for lawyers thing, and they're not very good or they're overpriced.
Right.
So I talk to attorneys about this all the time. So yeah, I've worked very hard to like cull lists of vendors who I think are credible, who've been in the space for a long time. I'm sure you know many of them as well. And
Yeah.
for attorney, like a lot of the work I do with attorneys is they're like, hey, I need these 5 things and I need your help with these 2 other things. But really what I need is like, can you tell me like 3 reputable providers in this space so I don't have to Google for the next 20 years? And like I mentioned, I was talking to Mike about this before, like that's not a lawyer's job to vet vendors in this space. Like I'm I do this all day long. So I'm happy to say, oh, you need like a website, you need SEO, whatever you need. Like there's qualified people out there who do it. So yeah, it's about finding the right people. It's about finding people who are not going to upsell lawyers just because they can. And there's, as we've seen, we talked about all these acquisitions taking place. There's a ton of interest in the legal vertical. So this kind of predatory, I would say, behavior is only going to ramp up.
It's like the library subscription for a book. It's like, I don't know why the subscription to the New York Times is $8,000 for the Hennepin County Law Library, and it cost me $2 a month. So,
right. Right. Yeah, you gotta be careful out there. You gotta be knowledgeable, but like there are, I should say, the other side of this coin is there are a lot of really reliable service providers who do care about what they do for attorneys. There's a lot of them out there.
Absolutely.
yeah, there is. I sometimes think that those online forums are the best place to make those matches. I mean, so often it's part of that is on us too, is providing services to our members, is to identify those folks. But it's really hard. It's really hard to find sort of trusted resources. And once we find them, our social media consultant who does professionals only, great presenter, great volunteer for the Bar Association, folks like that, are so valuable once you find them.
I think part of the thing that's really cool, I would say, and Jess, you I think probably feel the same way, is like it's a wholly different world being like a solo or small firm attorney than it was even like 10 or 15 years ago. There's so many resources out there. There's a ton of people who are willing to help. And it starts with just like a little exploration and intellectual curiosity on your part. And you can find people out there that will assist you, even if it starts out with like a forum.
Yeah. Yeah. Like there's some great Facebook groups for lawyers where people are always like kind of trading, like, this is who I've used and it was really great and that sort of stuff. So you just have to like put in a little bit of legwork to get some vetting. I want to make sure, Jared, you had one of these things in your list for your spring cleaning, revising your rate structure. And before we run out of time, that one piqued my interest, and I want to make sure
that's a good one.
Yeah, me too. You're reading my mind, Jess. Thank you.
I will say though, like on this Facebook group thing, like one of my biggest regrets in life is I'm not a mom, because there's so many of these like mom lawyer Facebook groups out there. And I feel like those would just be great forums to be in, but I'm forever barred, sadly.
That's okay.
Now, onto rate setting.
Yeah. You don't need to be in there. Just
okay, fair enough. I don't know what I'm missing. In terms of the rate, I've been having a lot of conversations with lawyers lately about tweaking traditional rate structures. And part of this has been coming for a long time. So there's a lot of downward pressure on fees for attorneys. That's not only because of a lot of things that have happened globally lately, like the pandemic. Some people have gotten a financial hit from that, and they have less ability to pay for legal services than they did before. There's this whole cultural notion that lawyers charge too much. Lawyers are greedy. People want that money to come down. And then you've got competitors like Rocket Lawyer and LegalZoom that are cheap. And people have a hard time paying lawyers' fees. And part of this is related to logistical challenges, but part of it is related to the fee structures. So we talked about Clio before. Clio had a legal trends report that came out a couple of years ago. And what that clearly identified is that consumers don't really understand the legal process. They don't know how to take a next step with a lawyer. So it's very hard for them to commit to paying like $1,500 to a lawyer when they can buy an online subscription to Netflix for like $15. That's cheap. It seems like a massive value. With lawyers, they're expensive. They don't know what the value proposition is going to be. So one thing they want to know is total cost of representation. And lawyers have a hard time in an hourly billing platform to relay that to their clients. So when you tell a client, like, I charge $250 an hour, that's not what they're looking for. Because when they ask until when, you say, I don't know, until the case is closed. And then the sweat starts to pour down their forehead.
Right.
So being able to say, hey, I think it's going to cost about X is helpful. So
this
alternatives.
is a huge reason why I don't do it anymore. That's
right.
I mean, that's
so you
exactly
switched,
it.
right?
I don't do any hourly billing.
Yeah.
It's all subscription and flat fee and limited scope.
So subscription, flat fee, limited scope, productization is another thing. Like
Yeah.
LegalZoom sells documents. Hey, guess
Yeah.
what? You could sell documents as a lawyer.
I
as
do that
well.
too. It's like my documents are better. They're
Right.
created by a lawyer that's a specialist in this area.
Local attorney as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I don't say specialist because we can't.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah.
you know, you can apply it. Sorry, we should probably stop going down this road. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
But then there's
can.
also like, but then there's also like Evergreen Retainers, which is another way to ramp up your revenue and also help clients to get a better sense of like what amount of money is due and when. Limited scope representation, you talked about that too. That's really great. I've seen people do risk collars as well. So what they'll do is the attorney will say, hey, I think this is going to cost around $40,000. It's going to take me 20 hours to do. I'm going to be wrong one of two ways. It's either going to be less than that or it's going to be more than that. So if it's fewer hours, I complete it faster, I get a success fee. It's more hours, it takes me longer. You get a reduction on every billable hour after the target is hit. So
that's interesting.
yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do it. And some of them are hybrid, so you can attach a billable hour to it. But if you did like a risk collar, then you could say, hey, I think this is what the total cost of the representation is going to be, which is what the client wants to know. And both parties are protected on either side. So we've just, in like what, 2 minutes, we've outlined like 7 or 8 different ways to revisit fee structures in 2021. And you should at least take a look at it, I think.
I'm holding my tongue for chat because inevitably, maybe somebody can read my mind. What am I about to say here?
Something about ethics.
Ethics. That's right.
Somebody is about to pipe in and say, but we can't because ethics, without even knowing or asking or thinking about it.
It's a legitimate question, Jess. It's a legitimate question.
It's a fear-based question.
Well, it is
We're
fear-based.
all afraid. We're afraid to lose our license, and that is rational, right? Yeah. But also we let the inquisition stop there. Instead of saying, how could I do this? Can I do this? Let me find out more about how I could do this. We go, oh, I think I can't because ethics, the end. Goodbye. Now I feel better.
Well, it's tough because like I understand from an attorney's perspective, like it's a big gamble to theoretically make. But if you look at the way that ethics entities operate, like what do you get dinged for? Lack of client communication and IOLTA issues for the most part. So keep your IOLTA clean, keep your clients happy. I probably shouldn't say this, but I tell lawyers all the time, like if your clients are happy, like it's probably not going to be an ethics claim unless you're in a state that does. And I don't know the ethics rules for every state, so I don't know enough about Minnesota ethics to necessarily wax poetic on this. But unless you're in a state that does like IOLTA check-ins on a recurring basis, unless you bounce a check out of IOLTA and you keep your clients happy, you're probably not going to see an ethical issue come up.
Well,
like nobody's going to target you for that.
I have enough opportunities to make my clients feel upset about their case, whether that's my fault or the situation, that you want to do things that promote keeping your clients satisfied, because you're absolutely right. And everybody knows about a friend who had a client that just was like pissed off for no good reason and reported them. And then people get pinched for stuff they shouldn't have because, just this client was angry. And everybody's human, right? Everybody makes accounting mistakes and whatever. So you just want to do your best, but you want to, when you're going to revise your billing structure, run it by your ethics counsel.
Well, that's the other thing too. You can always make a call. Yeah.
Run it by your ethics counsel.
And a lot of it, like attorneys like to operate in black and white, but which I always find funny. They all want to operate in black and white on their business side, but on the legal practice side, they're very comfortable dealing with gray areas and exploit them consistently. And I'm not saying you're exploiting ethics rules here necessarily, but like a lot of this is a gray area and nobody has a specific answer necessarily. If you look at like some of these questions we talked about with marketing, like outreach, automation, some people are going to say solicitation, right? Or some people are going to say, well, we need to have disclaimers in place to make sure that people know there's no attorney-client relationship at a certain point. That's all feasible in the technology platform. What you have to do is take a look at those ethics rules, extrapolate them to a modern convenience, and figure out how they apply. And if you call an ethics counsel, that's all they're going to do anyway. And
Jerry's throwing out the name Amy Halloran from the Office of Lawyers Professional Responsibility. If you want to get it straight from the horse's mouth, I like to use my ethics defense counsel, Eric Cooperstein.
No, that's a smart. Like I know a bunch of attorneys who, if they're going to try something, they're calling the state bar, but then they've also got an ethics counsel on speed dial where they say, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And maybe that person just lets them know what their position is on it, or they write a report or something like that they can use later on. That kind of thing is defensible as well, I think.
Absolutely.
Folks, I need to
Wrap her
stop the
up.
conversation.
Play the Oscars wrap it up music.
The band is playing.
Thank you both so much. Fantastic. I think we could go all day. But thank you so much for joining us this morning. I really appreciate this conversation. I'm getting emails and chats saying great discussion. So thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to Clio, our sponsor, for sponsoring us this week. We are back on the 2 weeks from now. I forget, is that the 3rd or the 6th? I don't remember, but we'll be joined by the 3rd of June. Already summertime. We'll be joined by Joan Biebelhausen from Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers and Patrick Krill. Both of them have authored new studies on lawyer wellness. So we're celebrating Wellness Month. 1 week late, but very excited to have both those folks joining us on the 3rd of June. So until then, we'll see you all then. Again, thanks guys so much for joining us.